Welcome back to Fast Gadgets. Today we have a fun episode. So what we're going to do is take this MacBook Pro 2011 13-inch laptop and we're going to upgrade it to High Sierra for starters. But before we do that, we're going to do a couple of benchmarks in El Capitan, and once we get it onto High Sierra, we'll do a couple more benchmarks. Then we're going to do a comparison with this system with my MacBook Pro 13-inch 2017. And essentially we're going to have a look at how good this 2011 system still is and why it's completely viable for any type of work that you want to do on it today. All right, before we get started, I thought we'd look at the specs of this particular MacBook Pro 2011. So I'm going to click About This Mac. And you can see that it actually is currently on macOS Sierra, and it is version 10.12.6 of macOS Sierra. It is a MacBook Pro 13-inch early 2011. It has a 2.3 gigahertz Intel Core i5 processor. I'm not quite sure what the generation is, so I will put it up on the screen. And it has an upgrade of memory, 16 gigabytes of 1333 megahertz DDR3. So I went ahead and did the memory upgrade on this particular system. It has Intel HD Graphics 3000 with 512 megabytes of RAM. And if we click over to storage, you can see that on this system I installed a SSD. It's a 480 gigabyte solid state SATA drive. So we're going to do two things before we get started here, before we upgrade to High Sierra. So I thought this system was actually on El Capitan, but it has been upgraded to Sierra, which is a good thing. I'm not really sure if we are going to get the newer file system when we upgrade to High Sierra, because this is a unit that I put in. The SSD is a upgrade that I did, and typically when you do that, some of the features like trim, for example, are not turned on by default with Mac OS. So I have had to purchase a piece of software to manage trim, which I think it was $10, called Trim Enabler. This is kind of a strange message. Trim has not been enabled through Trim Enabler, but is working anyway. So I can turn it on, so I'm going to do that. But it did say it's working anyway. I'm thinking the reason for that probably is Sierra perhaps now has trim support for third-party hard drives, SSDs, which I'm really glad to hear. Of course, for those of you not in the know, trim is very important. It actually makes the drive much more efficient and run much faster. And since we're talking about trim, let's go ahead and look at the disk speed test. We're going to use Blackmagic disk speed test. So it looks like we got a general write speed of around 430 megabytes a second and a read of 478 megabytes a second. Certainly that's not going to win any speed awards compared to newer modern drives that are in the newer Mac computers, but this is definitely a decent speed for the average user and what they're doing, and certainly would be more than good enough for rendering videos. This system I did used to use quite frequently to produce videos, and it did a great job, especially with 1080p. It was not a problem at all. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is install and run Geekbench. Now I had a Geekbench 3 score for this particular system, but I want to get an updated score, so we're going to check out Geekbench 4. Okay, our Geekbench scores came in: single core 2,889, multi-core score of 5,467, and keep in mind this is a dual core system. So overall, definitely still usable system that could be pretty much used for anything. So the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and do the upgrade. Now, I won't keep you here for the entire upgrade, but I will time it because I am curious. Now, it took about 45 minutes to upgrade my MacBook 2015. So we're going to find out in just a minute here how long it's going to take to do that upgrade. So I'm going to close that. I'm going to close Geekbench 4. And we're going to cruise to the App Store. Hopefully this won't take too long because we're already on Sierra. Pardon my camera moving. I have a certain cat down here using the tripod to rub her head on. Captain Janeway, we need you to behave, buddy. For those Star Trek fans, I thought you'd appreciate seeing Captain Janeway still doing her job, in charge of the entire ship as usual. Okay, so I'm going to click free upgrade. So it says it's going to take 24 minutes to download. It's 5.2 gigabytes, so it still has to download the entire ISO. So I'm going to let that download go through. As soon as it's done, I'll start the upgrade, and then we'll start officially timing it. Now this, of course, download speed's really a limitation of my internet connection, so it's going to take it a little while. Once it gets downloaded, we'll continue with the upgrade. All right, well, I had to make a little trip, and I left my camera running in the hopes that it would continue recording, but it looks like it stopped at some point. I'm going to go back and check the video, so I'm not 100% sure right now how long it took to actually do the upgrade. So my camera shut off. But anyway, the upgrade is completed. All right, before I run Geekbench 4, I'm going to take a really quick look and do about this Mac. And I can now see I'm on macOS High Sierra version 10.13.1. And if I cruise over to storage, we're going to find out what's happened here. Okay, so it did convert the SSD to an APFS volume. So the APFS volume, of course, is the newer file system type. So it has been converted. See if I can get this screen a little bit more readable for you here. There, that's a little better. So that's a good thing. Hopefully this will be a little bit more efficient. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close that, and I'm going to run the CPU benchmark. Before I do, I'm going to get the MacBook Pro 2017 out, and we'll run it on both systems. Okay, so the MacBook Pro 2017 took about 2 minutes to run the test. The MacBook Pro 2011 is still chugging away, but very close to being completed. It's at 2 minutes 46 seconds. All right, about 2 minutes 50 seconds to run the test and complete them on the MacBook Pro 2011. And I think you can see the scores for both. So the MacBook Pro 2011 single core 2,908, multi-core score of 5,512. The MacBook Pro 2017 4,051 and 9,194 for multi-core. So the processor, the i5 that is in my base level MacBook Pro 2017 is 5 generations newer than the MacBook Pro 2011 processor, but even so, you can see that it does a really good job of doing at least the synthetic Geekbench scores. The next thing we're going to do is run the disk speed analysis with Blackmagic and see if there's been any change in disk speed. And of course, as you can expect, the 2017 MacBook Pro is definitely much, much faster, but the disk speed in the 2011 MacBook Pro is definitely more than good enough for some of the basic functionality, and again, even rendering video. And next test we're going to do, we actually are going to render video using Handbrake. Okay, so what we're going to do for the Handbrake encoding test is encode a 4K 16-second file. So this particular file is not too long, but when we do the encode, we are going to use X264, and we are also going to convert it to 1080p 30 frames per second. All right, so the MacBook Pro 2017 finished the encode process in 1 minute 1 second, and the MacBook Pro 2011 finished the encoding in 1 minute 30 seconds, so it was about 29 seconds slower. Considering that it was a 4K file, that's actually a really good encoding speed for a system from 2011. So it is possible to go ahead and do encoding and rendering of video on a system from 2011, but it probably would be better suited with 1080p. All right, so what's the bottom line? Would I consider purchasing a MacBook Pro 2011 at this point in time? Absolutely, 100%. It still has a viable processor. This system here, I did have a memory upgrade to 16 gigabytes, but honestly, if you were just using it for daily use, surfing the web, basic internet usage, even watching Netflix or anything like that, the default 4 gigabytes would be fine. The SSD that was put in definitely sped things up. I was only seeing like 50 to 100 megabytes a second before putting the SSD in, so having the SSD makes it much more valuable. In comparison to the MacBook Pro 2017, of course, we're seeing roughly a 30 to 33% improvement overall when we're doing benchmarks, which are synthetic, so they're not all too powerfully revealing. That's why we went ahead and did the render using Handbrake, and you could see that it did definitely go considerably faster on the MacBook Pro 2017. But when you're looking at a base model for $1,500 and you're looking at a system that, you know, without the upgrade you probably could get for $400 to $500, maybe a little less, and then put in $150 to $200, you would have a really, really good system. It currently can use macOS High Sierra, as we've seen. The upgrade went perfectly fine. The system's running great. It's benchmarking. It's been upgraded to the newest APFS file system. So all in all, you can have a MacBook without spending top dollar and wasting a whole bunch of money, depending on what your needs are. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions or comments you want to make, drop them down below and I'll try to keep an eye out and answer any questions you might have about the 2011 MacBook Pro. If you really enjoyed this video, consider liking and sharing. I always appreciate when you do share the video. And of course, check out some of the other videos that I have finished. One of them is the MacBook 2015 video. So I bought a refurbished MacBook 2015 and I look at that one as well as doing benchmarks. So if you check that one out, you can compare it against this unit and kind of get an idea of what you're getting for the price. And keeping in mind that MacBook 2015 refurb was about $800. So a little bit different than this system. You can actually get the 2011 for a lot less money. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you next time on Fast Gadgets.